Well, hi, everybody. My name is Joshua Sear from the New Hampshire Tech Alliance. Thanks very much for joining us for our Lunch and Learn today, brought to you by McLean. We're going to be listening to Lori Richardson talk to us about the core competencies needed to succeed at sales. I just want to remind everybody that we're recording this session today and that we have a whole series of webinars and other events. So if you visit newhampshiretechalliance.com, you can find out all the different events that are going on, including next month's Lunch and Learn topic, which is really tech and cool, but I don't want to spoil that. I'm going to bring Susan on from McLean. She's going to talk a little bit about McLean and Middleton and the Lunch and Learn is coming up. So come on up, Susan. And again, thank you so much for sponsoring today's talk. I'm going to jump off and have you take the stage.
Great. Thank you, Josh. Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Damari. I am the Director of Marketing for McLean Middleton. We are a business law firm with 5 locations in Massachusetts and New Hampshire. And we have over 100 attorneys that work with businesses in all levels, whether it's through startups or through corporations or through succession planning. On November 17th, my colleague John Weaver will be joining us for a similar program on legal considerations for AI and robotics in your company. And I hope you can join us as well for this, what will be a really interesting conversation. We are pleased to partner with the New Hampshire Tech Alliance, and we are excited about today's program. So with that, I will ask Lori Richardson to join me.
Hello.
Hey, Lori, thanks for joining us. Just make sure you get the present screen share going and we're good to go.
Let me get that going here.
I'll stick on to let you know what's working on our end.
That sounds great. Let me, here.
Perfect. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm a proud member of this association, so it's always wonderful to present locally. And what we're going to talk about today is around sales. And specifically, what we promised, I want to make sure I deliver that. And I want to encourage your questions throughout. And Josh, you can interrupt anytime if anybody has a really pressing question. Otherwise, we'll take them at the end. But I'm happy to stop and further explain anything or talk further about something. I actually need to move. There we go. So we'll talk about core competencies to succeed at sales, and also what the most important factors for success are. And that's whether you're building a team, you have a team in place, maybe you're looking for your first salesperson, or you just started with one. Sales is an interesting topic, and in particular, with the fact that we're in the middle of a pandemic. I don't know if it's a middle, you don't know if it's a middle, but we know we're in something now, and sales has changed quite a bit. But I want to start off first and say, you know, my big message, regardless of how I nitpick about qualities for salespeople today, is that I believe that selling is the admirable profession in business. I feel very strongly about the fact that, you know, as people say, nothing happens until somebody sells something in a business. You know, the idea is to take your great ideas, your services, and perhaps products, and turn them into currency. And that's what sales professionals do. Now, can you sell some things virtually independent of people? Sure. But complex sales, complex selling, involves sales professionals, and that will change over time in terms of how we focus on more important and higher value pieces of a buying cycle. But in general, we need salespeople, and we need good salespeople. So as I mentioned, you know, there's no hiding around the fact that selling has changed. People who were on the road, remote field sales reps, had to go into a home office. People who were inside salespeople in companies left their cubes, and, you know, their sales teams where they could bounce ideas off of each other in a lot of ways, and started to work from home. So that's changed a lot, because one of the things we know from research is that not everyone works as well in a virtual environment. Not everyone works from home as well in a work context. So that's important to know, and it's important to learn more about that. The biggest thing, though, is that you really can't afford to make mistakes with sales right now. When the economy's great, we have lots of money flowing, it's okay. You know, people goof up. We've seen so much change in terms of the fact that a lot of people didn't have clear value propositions. People would buy things without really knowing how good it would be for them. And that isn't happening anymore. People are much more concerned about how they spend their dollars. And we need to have professionals that are ready to go. So you have a sales guy on your team, or maybe you have a team of people. You have a saleswoman on your team, or a team of people, men and women. They need to know the most important fundamentals. And some of the things I've heard recently are the following. One of the things I heard from someone is that we hired our first salesperson. We don't really know what they're doing because, you know, we had a simple onboarding process. They were professional. We just kind of let them go, but we don't really know what they're doing. So another situation I've heard, we don't know if salespeople are A players or B players or C players. Really not sure about that. And by the way, we don't really know what they should be doing. Don't know what they should be focusing on. Two different issues, and both very important. The third one I heard is, you know, typical, it's happened for years in sales, that a top salesperson gets to become the sales manager. Now, there's no direct correlation between being a successful sales manager and being a top salesperson. And yet, in business, we've done this for years and years and years. So training, coaching, all those things are things we want to think about. But today, I want to focus on the salesperson role and the core competencies to be successful. I'm happy to talk about sales management, but I'm going to focus today on salespeople. First, I have to give an assumption. And the assumption is that you have great products or services to sell. So that's a given, right? That's table stakes. You have really strong value propositions created around your products and services, because no matter what I can help you with in terms of salespeople, without the compelling value as to why your company and even why your product or service, if it's a new type of product or service in the market, we need that first for any salesperson to be effective. And then clearly you need to know who your target market is. Who are we calling on? And where are they? And, you know, do we know who they are? So assuming that you have that, then all we need to do is get salespeople who can sell and will sell. And then we also need a sales leader or leaders who can lead. I know it depends on the size of your company. Some of you have multiple leaders in larger sales teams. You might be listening in and you might be in the early phases of building a sales team. Either way, sales professionals, no matter their experience, no matter their tenure, need support, a framework, some coaching, and an ongoing accountability from whoever the leader is to make sure that they're on track, that they're headed in the right direction, and that it's supporting company efforts. So at this point, does anybody have any questions, Josh? Because I'm happy to take some now, or I'll just keep going.
We're good. Keep on going.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about the actual competencies that make a successful salesperson. There's an obvious piece, and if you can see, the competencies that people think you need are really skills based. Do they know how to hunt? Can they qualify? These are all things that we teach in sales training. And I've been a part of the sales training industry for years. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry. And unfortunately, I don't think it produces very good results, generally speaking. And there's some reasons for that, which I'm going to talk about. But people think that all you need to know are a certain set of skills like these, and then you'll be successful. And it's just not true. These are the important competencies that you do need from a sales standpoint, but there's more than that. So a lot of people think, hey, we got the tools, we got the technology. I brought in some people that know how to hunt and qualify, and they know consultative selling. So what else do I need? Well, let me tell you what you need. You need to hire people that have the will to sell. And the will to sell is made up of some different components. And this is all based on research. The top areas are desire. Are they really interested in doing this role? Are they committed? And by that, I mean, will they do anything, obviously legally, but will they do anything to succeed? Or are they going to make excuses about, why the economy's tough and so forth? Is their outlook supportive of their success, or is it unsupportive of their success? How are they motivated? Do they have a high level of motivation? And do you know if it's intrinsically motivated or extrinsically motivated? These are important things to know. Finally, responsibility. If there's no responsibility, then it makes for a very tough scenario, because I can give you an excuse every time for why I didn't succeed, because I never take responsibility. So will to sell is a really, really critical piece of success in a candidate, bringing someone on. The next thing is, and I think a lot of people have heard this about how coachable someone is. If you're not coachable, then there's no way you can continue your learning. You're set in your ways. Doesn't matter your age. But some people are just sure that they know what to do, and they're not going to listen to anyone else that has some advice or ideas. And that's a very difficult person to work with. That coachability combined with the will to sell, which gives you trainability, makes for an excellent person to work with. But there's more to it than that. And this is kind of the secret sauce that I want to share with you today. We believe that there's something called sales DNA, which are characteristics underneath the skills and the things that someone can teach you. These are things based on how we were raised, who we are as a person, and we call them sales DNA. They include things like whether or not someone needs approval. If I have a need for approval, I may not push back on you as much as a buyer when you tell me, we have a conversation, you're ready to buy something, we had wonderful exchange, we went over the investment, talked about how it will all work, and then you go dark and I don't hear anything from you. And someone that has a strong need for approval is going to be reluctant to follow up and say, hey, we had a great conversation. Did something change? Someone that doesn't have a need for approval will push forward a little bit and say, I'm confused. Can you help me out? I just need to know if something changed or not. So things like need for approval. Controls emotions is whether you are in the present moment, focus in the present moment. And if someone throws a curveball at you, how do you react? So there are a number of these items that we call sales DNA that will either help you support the sales skills that you have, or they actually can sabotage even some of the strongest of sales skills. And I'm happy to take any questions about that as well. But let's talk about what the cost of a bad hire is. What is the cost of a bad hire? Yeah, so you hire a couple bad people here and there, just doesn't work out. They're not bad people. They're just not a fit. They're not, maybe they have skills, but they're not applying themselves. And that's a common thing that I hear happening. So it's a pretty big investment to make bad hires of any type. With sales, there are a lot of factors to consider. As any of you know who are in recruiting, for example, or if you have recruiting in your company, hard costs, salary, any guarantees that have been promised, not to mention the cost of training, onboarding, any lost time because it took some time to bring someone on, then it's going to take more time to bring someone else on. They have to ramp up and go through a sales cycle with your product or service. Think about things like morale, how it affects morale if you're on the third salesperson in a year, like someone I talked to recently. Really big mental and emotional time, productivity costs. From an actual dollar standpoint, one of the resources that I was looking at talks about 1.5 times compensation for sales turnover. I think that could be low. So even a $50,000 base salary or guarantee for so many months, that's $75,000 down the drain, plus perhaps more. And I don't know about you, but most of us can't afford to make mistakes like that right now. And the good news is that there are things you can do about it, and we'll talk about that. The first thing is that you need to learn ways to better judge who you're hiring. And sales is a real tricky role, sales and sales leadership. I've been in sales all my life. I consider myself a sales professional, and that's why I can talk about this and say that we're kind of slippery sometimes, kind of hard to read. In fact, maybe the best sales job I ever do is in your interview for you to hire me. And then after that, I may not do as much. Now, that doesn't mean all salespeople are like that, but it's hard for the average person to really understand how to hire sales talent because it's different than any other role in the company. Focus on will to sell and coachability. Those are the areas that, most, the desire, the commitment, outlook, motivation. Those are the things you need to look for. When we talk about responsibility and you're interviewing a candidate and they talk about all these reasons why they weren't successful in a prior role, if there's a lot of blame going to the company or the industry or the timing, that's someone who is not taking responsibility. A good sales professional is going to say, I'm not really sure how it all added up. I know that I'm always learning as a sales professional, and it seems that it was, tough industry for me. So I ended up moving to a different industry or what have you, but they're not just going to blame and blame and blame. That's someone I'd be very cautious to hire. In terms of coachability, one of the best things you can do is that you can talk with someone in an interview and then give them a scenario and ask them, how they would change things, or try to get them to give their own input and see what they do. Because, I can ask someone to tell me how they would do something. They tell me, and then I would say, that's interesting, but could you do it this other way? And I could ask them to kind of flex and see whether or not they will do that. Because some people have a real hard time taking any coaching suggestions. So that's an approach that you can take to quickly learn a little more how coachable someone is. Also, we think so much, we need somebody in the aerospace industry or the, medical device industry, because that's who we need. And we know now there's so much research out that the past success you have doesn't equal future success, particularly in sales. And selling airplane parts is very different than selling, paper and pens or some other business to business service, a SaaS product. So that isn't the deciding factor. Just because there's somebody in the industry who's out of work that's in your industry and they're in sales doesn't mean they're necessarily going to be a good fit. Really important to know that going with your gut feel. We interviewed them, 2 other people interviewed them. We feel really good about this person. We have a gut feel that they're going to be successful. I've never been more successful than 50% doing that. And I thought I was pretty good. Most people I talk to have never been better than 50%. So again, you're throwing money out if you don't have a better way to do it. You don't have to use your gut anymore because I don't think it's good enough. And also there are more scientific approaches to do that. So any questions at this point, Josh? I know I've covered a lot of ground.
You've covered a lot of ground. This has really been great. Thank you, Lori. I'm really enjoying it. One question was, okay, we've hired this person. They're not quite working out. And there's that awkward period of time where you're just hoping it gets better, or you're wondering if you can do what you can do to fix it, or if you just cut. And maybe you can talk a little bit through that, because my experience has been you always hold on to them longer than you wish you did, after the fact. But it's not a pleasant process anyway. So what do you have to think about for metrics or ways to think about that?
Yeah, I have some strong opinions about it. First of all, I think that someone should never be surprised if they're suddenly being told they're not working out. They definitely need to be on some kind of a plan, and you need to be coaching them and holding them accountable to what they agree to do. A lot of times when people are held to new accountability standards, they will self-select out. Because when they know that that they're not really working out and that you're not going to just turn a blind eye, and in fact, you're going to say, you know what, I want to build a world-class sales team here, and I need you to step up, and we need these things met, such as having a meeting once a day or morning and end of day on what you're working on and how things are going. I need to look at your pipeline, and you put some things in place, hold someone accountable. Most people that don't want to be accountable will just opt out, and they'll look for something somewhere else. So that's a good news. It's rare that you need to actually let someone go. But if that's the case, then you are very clear. You set out what you're looking for. When we hired you, you have to remember, the thing about sales professionals is we're hired to bring in revenue. That's our job. And if we're not doing that, there could be some legitimate company issues. Maybe, maybe there's no marketing, maybe there's whatever it is. But it's on us. We took the job. If we can't make a go out of it, then, that's something that as a sales professional, I need to assess. But certainly, if you're not doing the numbers after some time, it's fair to say, I really need somebody to sell in this role. Are you interested in this other role that we can move you over to, or do you want to, buckle down and try to hit some numbers and go from there?
Great, thank you so much. And do you have like a timeline of any kind for being able to come, approach them and talk about their numbers and milestones, well, for a first hire especially?
Yeah, right away. Pre-hire. This is what it consists of. This is, we're going to put together a 30, 60, 90-day plan. It's part of the onboarding. Joe over here is going to be your sales manager and coach you. And you're going to talk once a week about different items, different areas that we think you might want to focus on. We're going to get your feedback. And so there's going to be structure from the very beginning, and there's going to be accountability, so that in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you're going to know within 90 days if someone is doing what it takes to be successful. And if they're not successful, I don't mean closing business, because maybe your sales cycle is 6 months or a year. That's different. But are they generating the activities needed to build their pipeline? Are they picking up the phone and having conversations with people? Are they utilizing all the social selling tools, or using email and all the different ways that they can prospect regularly, and adding more potential prospects, and then holding conversations to see whether there are viable opportunities in those companies? That activity doesn't happen in the first 2 weeks, a month, 60 days, 90 days, then I would cut my losses quicker, not longer.
Really great, Lori. Thank you. So, clarity, transparency, communication. Gosh.
Hey, imagine that, right?
Yeah.
And if I could just mention that, if people saw a little bit about competencies, if anybody wants to learn more about that, I'm happy to go over things. They can just email me, Lori@scoremoresales.com, and I'd be happy to share more insights.
Lori, maybe we can talk a little bit more about the concepts for the really long sales cycle, right? And not getting sort of demoralized, looking at your pipeline or your salespeople's pipelines, or even for the salespeople, because if it's a 9-month cycle, you're trying to sell into education or government or something like that, to really be thinking healthy about that.
Yeah, it boils down to activities that lead to bigger pipeline or a stronger foothold in an account that you're talking to. So let's say there's a company, and maybe it takes 6 months for the sales cycle, generally speaking. Doesn't mean it couldn't happen sooner, but generally deals happen in that amount of time. Well, I would expect that within short order, within the first 30 days and going into 60 days, someone could identify who the members of a buying group are for that product or service. And when we talk about a buying group, we know that one person doesn't make a decision in a company. It's closer, based on Gartner research, it's closer to 8 or 10 people make decisions at a certain value for a complex sale, especially if it spans multiple departments. And so those names should be identified. Some of those people should have conversations, and if you can reach them. There are also coaches within the company that could give you ideas and could tell you how you could reach someone who's hard to reach. So I'm showing lots of activity, and I'm putting it in my CRM system. I'm putting it somewhere where my supervisor, my sales manager, or might be the CEO in a small company, someone is reviewing what I'm doing so that you could see. And that's where the problem is, I think, in a lot of cases, is that no one's really supervising, and no one is really, because you don't really know what to do. But I can tell you there are clear guidelines for what a sales manager should do. That could be another session sometime. But also, people need to know that there is accountability. If I'm hired, and you know what, on Friday, what makes me work past noon on a Friday? Sunny day, maybe I want to go golfing. I need some reason. If I know that my sales manager expects to look at my results, Friday at 5 o'clock, then maybe I'm going to make some extra phone calls that day. But that's what we need. We all need accountability, and it's not a bad thing. It's not micromanaging. It's being accountable to what you agreed to and then following through with it.
Great. Thank you, Lori. And another question come in asking if you would be able to share some tips around sales forecasting.
Sure. I'm going to stop sharing. Is that good,
Sure.
Josh?
Yep.
I think I did. Yep. So sales forecasting, top tips. I'm trying to think of what industry we're talking about. Set up a pipeline. HubSpot has a free, I think their CRM is still free. At least it has been for a long time. Set up some stages. There are a lot of methodologies that you can use, and basically, just be rigorous to track activity and to update activity as you go along. So, yeah, I'm not sure. Happy to talk offline.
Right. So maybe sort of related to that, another question in identifying the prospects that they're not a no, but they're never going to be a sale, right? Like that horrible burn of time prospect, and any, like they'll fill the pipeline, but it's false information in your sales forecasts, and how to sort of identify that, and so you can kind of clear that out or tag it properly.
Yeah, a good manager will pull up one of those companies and say, tell me about XYZ Corporation. What's the opportunity? When did you last talk to them? What's happening there? And, if I keep putting that on my forecast week after week, eventually you're going to say, you know what? I don't think you're doing anything there. I don't see any activity changing. And so again, it goes back to being accountable. If I'm not moving something forward, then it needs to go to marketing. That's a marketing lead to nurture and send the monthly email or newsletter or whatever it is, and don't worry about it for now. Focus. It's a really good point that you want to focus on what's going to close sooner, what has the opportunity for closing sooner, and there are ways to figure that out for each sales team on who is a best opportunity for you by making a scorecard.
Thank you. And we have one last question here, and I think it'll it kind of segues a little bit. Is, a lot of us are working from home now, and so how can your salespeople find a better way to reach people when they're working out? When they're working out of the house, especially for that first contact? Is it changing how we're approaching, cold calls or other approaches? And what's your thoughts on that?
Right. There have been some studies done during the last few months about reaching executives. I know that Gong is one of the companies that has done some research. So is Chorus, because they record calls that salespeople make. And it's interesting because there was a time when it was harder to reach people, and then it went back up. There are more executives willing to take a meeting now than there were before, pre-pandemic. So it's not entirely true that it's harder to reach people, but you have to be creative. Utilize tools like LinkedIn and email and, all sorts of things, even digital. There are companies. We work with a company called Alyce.com, ALYCE.com, that you can send a very small gift card for coffee or something like that. There are lots of different ways to get people's attention, because that's the hardest part, is that we're just engulfed with, so much noise out there that you have to find ways to rise above the noise.
I fully believe that it's impossible for us anyway to get past all the noise and newsletters and webinars and everything else right now, right? Like it's definitely difficult to do that. Maybe we got to buy them all coffee. I'm on that.
Yeah. Call someone. It's being more personal, rather than no more mass emailing. It's about being personal.
All right. All right. Well, thank you so much, Lori. This has been really educational for me, and I think it's going to be really valuable. And of course, we're recording this, so it'll be available and we can share with everyone afterwards. So again, thank you, Lori. And if anybody has questions for Lori that we weren't able to ask today, Lori had some slides up with communication, but you can also reach out to us, the Tech Alliance, and we're happy to connect you to Lori from Score More Sales. I also want to say thank you to McLean Middleton for sponsoring the Lunch and Learn today. We have another event for next month for our Lunch and Learn, and that is, make sure I get that, is a really cool title, and I want to make sure I get it right. The Legal Considerations for AI and Robotics in Your Company. And I bet most of you have not even thought that it would be legal considerations. And so you should definitely check out the event next week, or next month rather. So stay tuned, look for our newsletter, the mass communications email Lori told us not to be working on so hard. And we'll also put it out on social, and I'll personally call you and let you know about it as well. Thanks for joining us today, everybody, and have a great day.